Welcome, everyone. The webinar will begin at the top of the hour and will be recorded. Connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Please use the hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. So once again, the campaign wants to connect with you. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. But once again, the webinar will begin shortly. It will be recorded and shared with you afterwards.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, thank you all for joining today's partner webinar, part of our GLR Learning Tuesdays series. Before we get started, I'll go over just a few housekeeping details. First, at the bottom of your screen, please use your chat box to introduce yourself. We'd love to know who you are and your organization. Secondly, all attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. This webinar is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be emailed next week to all who registered for the webinar. And then finally, we will be posting a brief survey poll during the Q&A and encourage you to give us your feedback. For those of you that are new to our webinar series, GLR Learning Tuesdays brings to the GLR network a more predictable and more reliable set of learning opportunities. We're here every Tuesday, every week at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We use this webinar format as a portal to access and explore the best science, ideas, and programs. Each time we are informed, inspired, and energized by a mix of presenters who bring knowledge derived from science, research, practice, and lived experience. We've now hosted over 20 webinars with a growing archive of recordings and resources. If you missed one of our webinars, please feel free to access them anytime on our Clip platform. So with that, let's get started. Today's webinar, in partnership with All Our Kin, couldn't be more timely. In the last week, our lives have been completely turned upside down as we all navigate a new normal. Across the country, schools have shut down, leaving the care of millions of children to parents or caregivers, including family childcare providers. Even before this crisis, our efforts to support parents and caregivers have been weak. This weakness has now been magnified and fully exposed. Today's conversation, Creating the Conditions for Family Childcare to Thrive, will give us an opportunity to learn about the family childcare landscape and the opportunity and now urgency we have to strengthen and support this critical resource for families and their children. So let's get right to it. To begin the conversation, I'm honored to introduce our panelists and our community commentator. First, we have Mackenzie Swirbul. Mackenzie serves as Senior Program Officer in Early Childhood at Robin Hood, a foundation whose mission is to fight poverty in New York City. She manages the organization's core early childhood grant making and supports Robin Hood's Fund for Early Learning, a 5-year, $50 million initiative of which All Our Kin is a partner. Mackenzie first began her work in early childhood during her undergraduate studies as a research assistant in Vanderbilt University's Early Development Lab, then with the Joan Gans Cooney Center at Sesame Workshop. Mackenzie graduated cum laude from Vanderbilt, earning her degree in child development and psychology with an additional focus on sociology. Next, providing us community commentary toward the end of the webinar, we have Jerletha McDonald. Jerletha is a social entrepreneur, early childhood specialist, business consultant, trainer, and national speaker. She has owned and operated a family childcare business for 14 years. Jerletha has a special interest in the economic development of women in the field of early care and education. She is the founder and CEO of Arlington DFW Childcare Association and recently launched the Jerletha McDonald Show Everything Childcare, a highly acclaimed radio show and podcast where she discusses everything childcare and provides a platform for early childhood educators to shine. Next, we have Jessica Sager. Jessica is the co-founder and chief executive officer of All Our Kin, a nonprofit that trains, supports, and sustains childcare educators. Through All Our Kin, caregivers succeed as business people, working parents find stable, high-quality care for their children, and children receive early learning experiences that lay the groundwork for achievement in school and beyond. Jessica has received numerous awards and recognition for her work with All Our Kin. A graduate of Barnard College and Yale Law School, she's also a lecturer at Yale University and has provided commentary on childcare issues for Time, The Hill, New America, and Education Week. Jessica is an Aspen Braddock Scholar and an Ashoka Fellow. And finally, we have Natalie Vieira. Natalie is the policy advisor at All Our Kin. For 3 years, Natalie led All Our Kin's policy work in Connecticut, partnering with staff, family childcare educators, early childhood advocates, and policymakers to push for increased resources and support for home-based childcare. Now Natalie leads a technical assistance initiative advising state and local leaders across the country who are eager to strengthen family childcare in their communities. Natalie played a key role in developing All Our Kin's family childcare policy framework, which you will hear more about today. And she has presented on this framework at conferences around the country. Kicking us off today with introductory remarks is Mackenzie Swirbul from Robin Hood, who you just heard about. So Mackenzie, I'm handing this off to you. Let's get going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yoli. So thank you to everyone again for joining us today amid everything that's going on in the world. As Yoli just said, it's such a timely and urgent issue. So really appreciate your joining today and your participation. So again, I'm Mackenzie Swirbul. I work at Robin Hood in New York City. And in our city, 1 in 3 babies are born into poverty. At Robin Hood, we're dedicated to fighting poverty to ensure that our youngest children, their families, their caregivers, and their communities can all reach their fullest potential. And investing in family childcare is an absolutely critical strategy to doing exactly that. So when we first learned about All Our Kin's strengths-based holistic approach to partnering with family childcare providers to transform opportunities for babies and families, we knew we needed them in New York City. And that's why we supported All Our Kin to open their first office outside of Connecticut, here in the Bronx. And why we are so excited that they are now taking the best of what they know about valuing and supporting family childcare, and bringing it to states and communities across the country. I am confident that you all will leave this webinar today with ideas about how you can join us in our efforts to increase access to high quality childcare for the children and families who need it the most. So now I'm excited to turn it over to Jessica Sager, the fearless leader of All Our Kin, to kick things off for us.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie, for that fabulous introduction. So hello, everyone. Thank you for making whatever complicated arrangements you had to make to be here with us today. Certainly, the world looked very different when we planned this webinar, but as Yoli identified, it's more timely now than ever, right? At the current moment, families are thrown into all kinds of chaos, and we're seeing that family childcare educators are often being asked to take the burden of caring for not only very young children whose families need to continue working, often healthcare professionals and first responders, but also provide care for school-age children. They're also playing a critical role at this moment as a conduit of resources and information for families who are disconnected and looking for information. So now more than ever, it's essential that we support our family childcare educators, and I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to share with you some of the ways that we do that at All Our Kin. So let me start by talking about our childcare system. I used to say our childcare system was broken, and then I realized that was giving us too much credit. We don't have a childcare system. It doesn't work for children, it doesn't work for parents, and it certainly doesn't work for educators. We have a system where childcare is incredibly expensive, where it is in very short supply, and where many children and families can't find their needs met. At the same time, educators are both underpaid and undervalued. So within this system, family childcare plays a critical role. Women across the country, family childcare educators, open their homes to care for children. And they do this for all families across all income levels and all ages. But I will identify that for the families that have the greatest barriers to care, so families with infants and toddlers, families with limited financial resources, families working non-standard hours, or who may face barriers around transportation and affordability, family childcare is a wonderful option. And it is the family childcare providers of our country who make it possible for these families to access care every day. Let's talk a little bit about family childcare by the numbers. There are about 1 million home-based childcare providers in the United States, and they're caring for about 50% of our young children. In fact, the majority of children in this country spend at least a portion of their time in home-based childcare. And families love family childcare. It can be a really wonderful option that they truly love for so many reasons. First of all, family childcare, again, women providing care in their homes, can offer a family-like environment, which particularly for infants and toddlers can be a very wonderful setting that feels very comfortable both for children and for their parents. Next, culture and language. Family childcare educators are reflective of the community in which they offer care. And so they're able to reflect a family's culture, their language, their values, even the kinds of foods that they prepare, and they're able to connect and communicate effectively with parents. Geographic accessibility. So transportation is a huge barrier for families. This is a place where family childcare is very helpful. You can find care in your neighborhood, you can find someone down your street, you can find an option that works for you. Flexibility. Family childcare is far more likely to offer non-standard hours. And as we know, fewer and fewer families today work 9-to-5 jobs, which is often what centers are able to offer to them. mixed age groups. When you send your child to a family childcare, as one family childcare educator said to me, he or she gets to be a child at every point in the family birth order. She gets to be the adored baby, the happy middle child, and later the mentor and peer to others. And parents can send children of different ages, including school-age children, to the same program. Family childcare is much more affordable. And in fact, supporting family childcare is a great way to support your local business and bring dollars back into the economy. These are just a few of the reasons why family childcare is something that families truly love and value. But family childcare is really difficult work. A family childcare educator often works alone, caring for a group of 6 to 12 children all day, every day, without a lot of other adults around, a lot of connection to her peers, or a lot of supports. The pay, as we know, in this field is low overall, but for family childcare, the compensation is even lower, and there's often lack of access to benefits. You're a self-employed person, and that makes the work even harder. Requirements continue to rise around education and professionalism, which is wonderful, but often comes without the support that it might take to actually make it viable to access the training needed. The hours are very long, typically 10 to 12 hours a day. Resources and support are sadly in short supply. And added to that, you need to run a small business and be not only a teacher, but a chef, a center director, and of course, an entrepreneur. And finally, we face a host of assumptions about family childcare, like family childcare is low quality care, like family childcare is a second best option, that are absolutely not true, and frankly are often rooted in racism, sexism, xenophobia, or simple ignorance of what family childcare actually looks like. So, within this context, I want to tell you a little bit about what we've done at All Our Kin. All Our Kin trains, supports, and sustains family childcare providers so that children and families get the foundation that they need to succeed in school and in life. We have a quality highway, which is a proven, tested model for increasing the supply, the quality, and the economic stability of childcare. So through our licensing support, we actually bring new caregivers into the field and ensure that they meet health and safety standards. Through our strength-based coaching and training, we radically increase the quality of children's learning experiences, ensuring that our wonderful family childcare educators have access to the latest of what we know about brain development and how to support and scaffold children's learning. And through our business training, we help childcare providers earn more and stay in the field longer. Our model is a triple win because childcare providers build better lives for themselves and their own families, parents succeed in the workforce, and most importantly, children from all backgrounds have the opportunity to succeed. So let me tell you about a few of our outcomes. We build supply. Over a 10-year period, we increased the supply of childcare by 74% while the supply fell around us. And we know that sadly, the supply of family childcare is dropping across the country as it was in Connecticut and continues to be. We are transforming the quality of care. Our family childcare educators score over 50% higher on research-based observational tools that measure the quality of children's early learning experiences, and our children outperform peer and national norms on language and literacy, problem solving, and social emotional development. Earnings. Our family childcare educators can expect to earn $5,000 more after 1 year with us, $10,000 more after 2. And every educator that we license make it possible for 4 to 5 parents to enter and remain in the workforce. And because of our impact on both provider and parent earnings, our work delivers a return on investment of $15 to $20 in local economic returns for every dollar that we invest in our newest childcare educators. Our work has been recognized across the country. It's uniquely successful because it's strength-based, holistic, and rooted in research about how adults and children learn. We're reaching right now about 1,000 children across some of the 1,000 family childcare educators, across some of the poorest neighborhoods in New York and Connecticut. And we're reaching about 6,000 children, of whom about 2/3 are on childcare subsidy and 1/3 qualify for public assistance. So where do we go next? Well, we have a 3-part vision for how we want to continue to lift up our work with family childcare educators and take what we've learned about what it takes out into the broader community. First off, we're opening more All Our Kin sites. So Mackenzie flagged that with Robin Hood support, we began in Connecticut, we've expanded to the Bronx, we're opening another site in New York City, and we continue to engage with family childcare educators directly, both bringing the best of what we know about the field and learning every day from family childcare educators about their important work and how we can best support it. Second, technical assistance, training other agencies around the country in some of the key pieces of our model, like coaching and professional learning, like business development and training, like how to set up and run an effective staffed family childcare network, and like how to set up sustainable policies that can make family childcare a robust and thriving part of the local or state economy. And this brings me to the last piece, which is we are really focusing on transforming policy and practice, because so often we see that family childcare educators are doing the important and needed work already, but that there are so many barriers in their way in terms of access to the training, the supports, the subsidies, the systems, everything that could enable them to support children and families as effectively as they have the capacity and desire to do. And so we have a new initiative that is really aimed at taking everything we've learned in 20 years, putting that policy framework out into the world, and also really lifting up and amplifying the voice of family childcare educators themselves, who are by far the most knowledgeable and effective advocates and scholars on the subject of how to build family childcare systems. So with that being said, I'm gonna turn this over to Natalie Vieira, who's gonna talk a little bit about our policy framework.
Thanks, Jess. So Jessica just set us up perfectly to talk about what we really came here to dig in on today, which is All Our Kin's vision for change, our vision for transforming systems across the country to ensure that we have robust, thriving family childcare programs that truly meet the needs of all children and families. But as Jessica alluded to, we didn't just arrive here. The momentum around family childcare has been building and building over time, thanks in large part to the advocacy, I'm sure, of many of the folks who are tuning into this webinar today. And so finally, over the past couple of years, as policymakers have started to understand the importance of the first few years of life, and as they started to understand the importance of having childcare options across settings in order to meet the needs of families, they've finally been looking at family childcare and saying, okay, we see that home-based childcare is a critically important piece of this childcare puzzle, and we want to support it, but we have no idea what to do. And so starting probably a couple of years back, All Our Kin began receiving calls from stakeholders across the country on a regular basis who were asking us for support in investing in and supporting and transforming their childcare system. And these stakeholders ranged from a staffer at the local mayor's office to a CCDF state administrator to someone from the local zoning board or a childcare union or a family childcare association. And so we took a step back and we reflected on our work over the past 20 years and realized that we thought we had something really unique to offer to the field that hadn't been talked about much before. And that is strategies for supporting family childcare that sit at this intersection of policy and practice. And so we're going to talk about what that means with a lot of examples in a little bit, but I'll give you one example now to sort of set the stage. When All Our Kin first expanded from New Haven, Connecticut into Bridgeport, Connecticut, we noticed that although Connecticut family childcare providers are able to care for up to 3 before and after school students, there weren't a lot of school-age children in the family childcare homes in Bridgeport. And after doing a little digging, we realized that that is because the school bus system in Bridgeport, Connecticut wasn't allowing for pickup and drop off from family childcare programs. And so by talking with the mayor's office and getting that one policy changed, we were able to dramatically transform families' access to family childcare programs for their school-age children. And that's just one example of how even though school-age children could be in family childcare on paper, if other policies aren't implemented correctly, it really leaves this gap in access. And so those are some of the strategies that we thought would be really valuable to put out into the world with our new policy framework. And so we sat down and we took the best of what we know, and we held focus groups with family childcare providers, and we talked to partners across the country, and we ended up putting out a policy publication at the end of 2019 called Creating the Conditions for Family Childcare to Thrive. And we're going to take you through that publication in a little bit of detail in a moment. But before we do, I want to talk to you all about some of the key principles that really form the foundation of our thinking for our policy framework. And these are principles that we believe everyone who is influencing a childcare system should be considering, particularly as it relates to family childcare, but really as it relates to the system as a whole. The first is behavior change coupled with policy change. We know that we're never going to see the transformative policy change that we seek if we're not also doing the work of changing hearts and minds about the value of family childcare. And along with that, as I mentioned before, we know it's not just about the what when it comes to policy, but it's really about the how. How are we implementing policies, programs, and practices in ways that center the needs of providers and the children and families they serve? Investing in high-touch strategies and supports. We know that when it comes to family childcare, licensing is not enough. One-off professional development opportunities can be great, but they're not enough. We really need to be looking at a continuum of sustainable supports and services that are serving providers at every stage of their professional development and that are supporting them in their dual role as educators and as entrepreneurs. Remembering that the small details are a big deal too. We notice so often that it's not just about the administrative and legislative policy change, it's about making sure that providers really feel seen and heard and valued. And that can be something as simple as receiving a letter from the local early childhood agency that says, "Thank you so much for the role that you play in the lives of children and families and communities." Even something as simple as that in a profession that is so often undervalued can make a really big difference for providers. Strategies for meaningful engagement and outreach. If we want to reach family childcare providers, we need to meet them where they are. We need to be in the communities where they live. We need to communicate in the languages they speak. We have to offer content that is culturally relevant. Educating parents. So often, as I think Jessica mentioned earlier, strengthening family childcare really involves combating assumptions about the quality and professionalism in home-based care. And that's really important because oftentimes home-based childcare may be best positioned to meet the needs of families, and they need to feel comfortable with that. Getting to the right decision makers. There are a variety of decision makers, from state legislators to designers of professional development systems, who have an important role to play in family childcare systems, and we want to make sure that they feel included in this framework. Grounding in a relationship-based approach. Providers often bring such a wealth of knowledge and skills and experiences to their work, and we want to make sure that every program and practice that is designed to support family childcare is coming in a way that really values that provider's background and experience and is grounded in a mutual respect for the incredibly difficult and important work that providers do. And finally, equity. We know that children learn where they are, and millions of our youngest children are in family childcare homes. And as a matter of equity, we need to make sure that those providers and those children and families are receiving access to the same supports and services as their peers in other childcare settings. So Now that we've gone through the principles, I'll do a quick overview of the 6 big buckets of our policy framework before we dig in on what this all means. We probably could have had many more buckets here, and all of these intersect and interact, but when we put it down on paper, these are the 6 major policy buckets that we think that systems designers should be thinking about when they're thinking family childcare. They're funding family childcare programs, supporting quality in family childcare, building sustainable businesses, family childcare licensing, housing and zoning and the ways that that interacts with family childcare, and engaging stakeholders across systems in supporting these family childcare programs. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take you through each of these buckets, and for each we're going to present our grand vision for that bucket and then talk through some strategies and examples that we hope are useful to you in your thinking about how to get there. And I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to walk us through our first one, which is funding family childcare programs.
Thanks so much, Natalie. So funding family childcare programs, and you'll see for each of these we lay out a condition and then we give a couple of examples. So we'll talk through each of these, not in as much detail as we would like, but read the report, come back, we're happy to dig on more on any of these. So the first obviously is funding, right? So the condition: families have financial support that allows them to access quality childcare options that meet their needs. Family childcare providers have stable, fair compensation that allows them to run high quality, sustainable childcare businesses. So let me talk about a couple of the buckets here, how they can work, how they sometimes do work, how they could be better. So childcare subsidy dollars, right? This is number one. The Child Care Development Block Grant is the number one source of funding for children and families in family childcare, as in many other settings. And to the extent we have any kind of sort of ongoing source of funding for children in these programs, it is CCDBG. So making sure that dollars are available to families, that they can access them, that it's not too difficult to get the information, and that funding levels are set at a rate that's sustainable. And I don't want to go into too much detail here, but I will flag that, for example, using something like a market rate that looks at what providers charge is usually not the most effective way of pegging your subsidy levels, when we know that family childcare educators take what parents can pay rather than what they truly need to sustain themselves and their families in many cases because of their deep dedication and commitment to the field. Childcare subsidy dollars are also a really big issue right now in the face of the COVID-19 crisis. So ensuring there are policies in place that make sure that if childcare programs need to close temporarily, or if families cannot come because of illness, the childcare dollars continue to flow to these programs so that they are sustainable over time and that we don't end up losing even more family childcares. Pre-K dollars. Thinking about how to include family childcare as part of a system for 3 and 4-year-olds in those cases where it actually makes sense for families and where you're working with family childcare to ensure that they're meeting levels of quality. Early Head Start childcare partnerships, such a wonderful model, and I actually was able to be part of a webinar through this group to talk about why the model is so great, for using federal dollars to fund slots for infants and toddlers in family childcare programs, which works so very well for all the reasons that we talked about earlier around access, around hours, around transportation challenges, and then wrapping these families around and these family childcares around with all the wonderful supports and services that Early Head Start can offer. And finally, looking at models where states can contract directly with family childcare networks to provide slots for children. This is a great way of ensuring the stability of family childcare businesses and engaging family childcare networks as a wonderful way of supporting and ensuring quality for children. There's another bullet that I want to call out here, although it's not listed. Natalie will touch on this a bit later, but thinking about how to fund these businesses as businesses. So for example, right now, it's essential that we are all thinking wherever we are about what it will take to enable family childcares as small businesses to weather COVID-19 and come out and stay open on the other side. Again, these family childcares are both sources of education and support for families and really powerful drivers for their own community's well-being. So investing in their economic success. So before I move on, just along the lines of little things matter, for each of these buckets, I've talked about a big bucket, but the implementation is something that is also critical. So it's not just about the funding, it's about the administration. So to talk about childcare subsidy dollars for a moment, whether a family childcare educator can get a quick and clear answer on whether a family is approved for subsidy is going to make all the difference in her ability to take a family in need. Whether she can get someone on the phone during her limited time when the children are napping, and that person responds to her in a respectful and thoughtful way with her subsidy questions, is going to make all the difference in whether she wants to continue in this difficult and important field. And whether a family can access the subsidy quickly and easily, or has to take a day off to go to an office to stand in line to file the forms, is going to make all the difference to whether that family actually is able to access the child care system and place their child in safe, high quality care that makes it possible for the whole family to be successful. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Natalie to take us through the next slide.
Great, thank you, Jess. So I'm going to talk about supporting quality in family childcare. And our goal is that family childcare providers have access to the high quality resources, training, and support that they need to provide quality early care and education that lays children's foundation for success in school and in life. And this touches on everything from professional learning to quality rating and improvement systems to higher education and credentialing and beyond. So I'll start by talking a little bit about professional learning, because this is so critically important. And I'll start with an example or a story. There was a group that reached out to all our kin at some point last year, and they said, you know, we have some professional learning dollars. Normally, we only do professional development for centers, but this year we really want to open it up to family childcare. So we got a great trainer and we did outreach to family childcare programs, and we had a great training space and we had food set up, and the day came for the training and no provider showed up. What is going on? So we talked with this group a little bit, and we found out that they were holding the training at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, when we know, of course, that many providers who are often working alone in their homes can't attend. So when we talk about professional learning, we really urge folks to think about the implementation and the logistics. Is it being held at night and on weekends so that providers can attend? Is it being offered in the languages that are most prevalent in that community? Is there a hot meal available? Because when that provider comes straight from closing down her program to a professional learning opportunity, it's really nice to have a nice dinner waiting and to build some community around food. Is the content rooted in best practice and adult development and offering the best of what we know about resources in the field? Is it culturally relevant and responsive? Is it designed to accommodate different learning styles? These are the questions that we really urge folks to ask when they're opening up professional learning opportunities to family childcare providers, because these are the questions that are going to make the difference in terms of whether a provider can meaningfully access and engage with that learning opportunity. When we talk about quality rating and improvement systems, or QRIS, what we urge is for folks to think about standards that are equivalent but not equal. We know that family childcare providers can and will rise to the highest levels of quality. And we also know that because of the nature of a childcare program being operated in a home versus a center, there are some programmatic differences about how quality may look, and we want to make sure that that is honored and valued and reflected in a quality rating and improvement system so that family childcare providers can climb that ladder. And so there are examples of states that have done this. In Illinois, when they were envisioning their QRIS system, they first started with a process that created standards for center-based systems. And then they said, okay, we're going to do this for family childcare as well. And they brought in family childcare educators and stakeholders into the room to create those standards so that it would be a really meaningful quality ladder for the profession. And finally, we put staffed family childcare networks on this slide, although I think it could have gone on any one of these slides. All Our Kin is a staffed family childcare network. We see them as a critical strategy for providing holistic, strength-based support as educators are on their quality journey. We do that most meaningfully through our one-on-one educational coaching program, through which one of our educational coaches, who is an expert in both child development and adult learning, will work with a provider one-on-one in her home around improving quality. But there are a host of other supports and services that staff family childcare networks can offer, and we think they're a really critical strategy across all of these recommendations that we're going to talk about today. Next, I'll talk a little bit about building sustainable family childcare businesses. We want providers to be recognized and supported in their role as entrepreneurs and economic drivers. And I know Jerletha will talk about this later because she is so just so passionate about this topic and speaks about it across the country. Family childcare providers don't often go into this work because they want to be business owners. They often do it because they want to be educators and they want to support children and families. But they are entrepreneurs and they are economic drivers, and it's a critically important part of their role. And if they don't have the support they need in that area, it can really impact both the quality and the sustainability of their business. And we want to make sure that these businesses are around for years to come for children and families in the community. So we want to make sure that states and communities are looking at offering business training and support that is specifically tailored to the home-based childcare setting. There are a lot of resources around this. The National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance has a great training. Tom Copeland, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, has a lot of great resources around this. At All Our Kin, we've developed a 10-week proprietary family childcare entrepreneurship series that walks providers through everything from marketing and enrollment to accounting, to how do you create a strong contract and parent handbook that really sets the stage for meaningful parent engagement. And we've seen tremendous, tremendous strides when providers take this entrepreneurship training and then are supported one-on-one by a business coach who can really dig on the specific needs of that provider. Loan programs, or even better yet, grants, particularly I think at this point in time, as we're thinking about how we can best support providers as they respond to COVID-19, they need access to financial resources. And under normal circumstances, they need that access too. They may need to repair something in the home. They may need to buy a computer for business purposes. They may want access to financial resources so they can attend a really great conference. And so what we do at All Our Kin is we offer a zero interest loan program where what providers take out as a loan is what they pay back. And we work with them one-on-one to create a payment plan that works best for them so that they can gain quick and easy access from a trusted source to financial resources that are going to support their business. And of course, I can't talk about building sustainable businesses without mentioning compensation. And this is so tied to some of the strategies and topics that Jessica talked about in the funding section. If providers aren't compensated in a way that supports themselves and their own families and is really valuing the difficult work that they do, their business is not going to be viable or sustainable. And so we see strong business practices as a way to get to compensation, but we also know that there are factors beyond what is often in a provider's control that contribute to whether or not she is equitably compensated for her work. And so I just want to acknowledge that here. Next, I'll talk about family childcare licensing. We want providers to be supported in meeting licensing regulations that recognize their role as early childhood professionals, that make sense in a home-based setting, and that are really the first step on a long pathway of quality. One thing that we have seen at All Our Kin is that when providers are supported in a holistic, strength-based way on their journey to quality versus an approach that is simply punitive or compliance-based, it really makes a tremendous difference in the quality of their program overall, and they are more likely to be in compliance with family childcare licensing regulations than not. And so last year, we worked with a couple of folks out of the Yale School of Medicine and the Yale School of Nursing, and they compared the data from providers who participate in All Our Kin's programming in Connecticut and providers who do not. And they looked at licensing violations, state licensing violations, and they found that the providers who work with All Our Kin had far fewer licensing violations, statistically significantly less violations than non-All Our Kin providers, even though our coaches, when they go into the home, are not focused on monitoring and compliance. Of course, if they see something that presents a risk to a child, they're going to say something, but it's really not the focus of those visits. But we still found that those providers were having far fewer violations in terms of state licensing data. Inter-rater reliability. This is a frustration that we've heard voiced from our providers and from providers across the country when different folks come to the home, different licensing inspectors, for example, come to the home, saying different things or having varying interpretations of the regulations. It causes a lot of frustration and stress for the providers, and it may make them want to disengage with the licensed childcare system, which of course is not the goal. So we really advocate for state agencies, state licensing agencies, to provide training around inter-rater reliability so that anyone who is entering a provider's home is doing so with the same information and the same interpretation to make that interaction a little bit easier and a little bit more fruitful for both parties. And finally, as we think about barriers to licensure, and there are many of them, from making sure that the paperwork and the process is accessible to paying for background check fees, which can often be very expensive, we're hoping that states are looking at ways to eliminate these barriers. And I'll give a great example. Last year, the Office of Early Childhood in Connecticut dedicated some money to waive the background check fees for all family childcare providers and adult members of the home through the end of the year, because we were coming up on our background check deadline for federal subsidy, and they wanted to make sure that that didn't pose a financial barrier to providers. So that's one example. And I want to say a couple more things while we're on this slide. I was speaking with a provider who has been in business for more than 30 years now, some months ago. And she said, you know, Natalie, when the licensing inspector comes into my home, she always finds a reason to cite me, but she never ever says, wow, you have such a beautiful space, or I love your dramatic play area. And starting the interaction with that relationship-based, strength-based approach would make all the difference to the way that this provider felt valued in the system. And so that's the thinking that we really want to infuse into all childcare systems, because we know it's going to make a tremendous difference for the providers. And then before I turn it over to Jessica, I want to talk to you all about housing and zoning in family childcare. We want providers to have access to safe, affordable housing where they can operate quality, sustainable, home-based childcare businesses. And this is something that, for the most part, hasn't been talked about a lot when we talk about childcare systems, although I think it's gaining more attention more recently. There are a lot of barriers related to housing and zoning that family childcare providers face as they look to start or expand or maintain their business. And I'll give a few examples. Some municipalities have strict zoning requirements that say that you need to have a certain amount of parking spaces outside of your home in order to operate a family childcare business. And that may be a requirement that providers simply cannot meet in any given neighborhood. We have heard stories of landlords who have said, you know what, go ahead and operate your childcare program, but don't pursue licensure through the state. And they do that because they know that there's lead on the property and they don't want to have to go through the lead abatement process. That's maybe a more egregious example of a barrier that a provider might face. Other times there are landlords or homeowners associations that outright ban family childcare. And sometimes it's simply because they don't really understand what it is or how it's regulated. So there are a variety of different issues associated with operating a family childcare home. And yet there are a lot of things that we can do too. So we can enact zoning laws that say that if you meet state licensing regulations, you don't need a special permit from your municipality. There are no other requirements that you need to meet besides your state licensing requirements. And those laws can be acted at the municipal level, or they can be enacted at the state level so that all municipalities in a state need to comply. In public housing, where oftentimes families really desperately need access to high quality childcare options, we've heard really varying stories and approaches to family childcare from local housing authorities. Some are really receptive and they love it and they promote it, and others don't allow family childcare to operate in public housing. So having a conversation with that local housing authority can be an important first step to ensuring both that providers who live in public housing can operate these businesses and sustain their own families, and to ensure that the families living in public housing have access to this valuable community resource. And then finally, facilities funding is a really important topic, and the Bipartisan Policy Center has some great resources on this, but there are a lot of reasons why providers may need facilities fundings to ensure that they can meet state licensing requirements. And so ensuring that those funds are available and are easily accessible for providers can make a huge difference. And before we move on, I want to highlight a really important piece of legislation out of California, thanks to the Childcare Law Center, which has been dedicated to working on this issue for a very long time. Just this year, as of January 1st, they enacted a piece of legislation called the Keeping Kids Close to Home Act. And that is by far the most comprehensive piece of legislation in the country that actually protects and promotes family childcare as it relates to housing and zoning. And one really important thing that that legislation does is it says that you cannot be prevented from renting a space if you are a family childcare provider. And it provides pathways for providers who think they've been discriminated for being a provider to recover some of those damages. So I would encourage anyone who is interested to take a look at that legislation. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica to talk about our last bucket, engaging stakeholders across systems.
Thanks so much, Natalie. So this bucket, I think, is very, very timely right now because family childcare educators are working with very young children and their families. Their work is actually at the intersection of multiple domains of family well-being, everything from K through 12 systems to health systems to mental health systems to workforce supports to family resources. Family childcare educators are incredibly trusted messengers for families, and they're often engaging with families who are very disconnected from existing systems who have young children, and this is really their first point of contact with so many of the resources that exist in community. And so really thinking about how to bring all the stakeholders to the table so that family childcare educators are supported, but even more so that children and families get what they need at a really critical time in their lives. This is an opportunity that I think is far too often overlooked. So to talk about a few examples, health systems. We have health consultants in childcare centers. We typically don't have them in family childcare programs. And certainly family childcares, which operate on a very thin margin, are not in a position to contract with health consultants. But if we look to our public health systems to send nurses into family childcares, the impact that they are able to have not only on the health and safety of those programs, but in ensuring that children receive the immunizations and well-child support that they need, as well as that children's healthcare challenges are identified early, and supporting case management is profound. Through our own early Head Start Childcare partnership, which is a small but important part of what we do, kind of like a lab school for us, we have seen firsthand the incredible difference that these nurse consultants are able to make. And we've worked with Margie Rosenthal, who's a researcher at the Yale School of Medicine, to identify the incredibly important role that family childcare educators, when supported by nurse consultants and healthcare experts, can play in educating families. We actually worked with the Yale School of Medicine, and we did a study to assess parents' perception of who to go to on health advice. And we had parents tell us the pediatricians have the knowledge of the field, but it's the childcare provider that actually knows my child. And we heard things like, my doctor can tell me to do something, but when my childcare educator tells me, I know it's the right thing to do, right? So leveraging that resource, getting information to families is critically important. Supporting childcare educators is critically important too. And we see that now during COVID-19 more than ever. Childcare educators are asking, how do I know whether a child should be allowed to come? How do I know whether I should keep my program open? What is the latest thinking from the public health field? And we've been working really hard at All Our Kin to make that information readily available in partnership with other networks across the country and national groups, because family childcare educators are struggling to get critical knowledge that is going to make all the difference in the safety of their programs. Mental health supports and supporting children with developmental delays. So agencies operating Part C under IDEA are offering strategies to children and families to support their healthy development. These agencies can exist in all kinds of different relationships to family childcare educators, but where we are able to build trusting, mutually respectful relationships so that the agency staff and the family childcare staff can work together, we're able to see tremendous strides in how children develop and grow. When family childcare educators are together with the parent and the agency staff, a part of that team and a part of that child's individual development plan, it means that everything the child is experiencing can help that child move towards success. K through 12 systems. Family childcare educators know children so well, and often they are intimately involved in their lives from the very earliest years and in an ongoing basis after school, often until the child turns 12. So where we're able to broker relationships, in particular between kindergarten teachers and family childcare educators, but more broadly K through 12 systems as well, so that family childcare educators have a very clear sense of what children will be expected to know when they enter school, so that kindergarten teachers are hearing about individual children and what they love and what's it's going to take to support their learning. It's going to make a big difference in children's success in school. And finally, community services. I could go into so many amazing partnerships that we've built over time, but I'm going to highlight just one. We have been able to partner with organic urban farming projects to create container gardens in family childcare educators programs, sometimes in areas that are really food deserts, so that we're able to provide a source of healthy fruits and vegetables to children and create little tiny nature classrooms where children can engage, just as they are doing more and more in schools, in actually seeing where their food comes from and being enthusiastic participants in the harvesting and preparation and eating of food, as well as all the ways in which they can use these gardens to support literacy, numeracy, science, and all kinds of learning. We do that at All Our Kin, but it started as a one-off partnership in one of our communities, and then it was so successful that we took it in lots of other places. We have a partnership with the Yale Art Gallery, where we're able to use that resource as a place where children and family childcare educators can go to study art and observe and learn and do wonderful activities. And that program has become a model for other museums as well. So the key point I want to make here is pretty much any resource that's important in the life of families should be engaging with family childcare educators. And it should really be a two-way engagement and a partnership. So not a resource list and not a prescriptive list of, hey, family childcare educators, you should do this that we as experts are telling you, but rather, here's our expertise, here's your expertise, how can we work together to create really wonderful programs that will ensure that children and parents have what they need to be successful. So there's a lot more I could say on this, but I will pause there because I know there's still more that we want to talk about.
Well, I am really eager to turn this over to Jerletha for her thoughts. But before I do, I just want to review All Our Kin's opportunities for technical assistance in case any of you are interested in learning more. So the first thing I want to say is that All Our Kin is building more sites. Jessica mentioned earlier that we're opening a new office in New York City in addition to our current office in the Bronx, but we know that we're not going to open offices everywhere. And we know that there are already so many phenomenal agencies and organizations and partners in states and communities across the country who already have deep and meaningful relationships with family childcare providers and who are doing this work and who are often under-resourced themselves. So our technical assistance opportunities are really designed to build on that great work that's happening and provide support in places where it could help folks supplement what they're already doing and take it to the next level. So our mentor coaching strand is for people who are working one-on-one in the home with family childcare providers. And through mentor coaching, one of our really experienced educational coaches will train coaches in other states and communities on All Our Kin's holistic, strength-based, relationship-based educational coaching model, which has been shown to really transform the quality of care in family childcare. Through our business Train the Trainer, we train people who want to deliver All Our Kin's 10-week family childcare business series in their own community, and we train them both on the content, but also how to deliver the content in a really meaningful and engaging and fun and interactive way. Through policy advising, which is our newest strand, we are going to partner with small teams of state and local leaders from across the country who are really eager to support and strengthen family childcare in their community. And we're going to provide some tailored consultation and support to help them do that. And finally, in places where folks are really interested in developing staffed family childcare networks, we provide some guidance from our experience in doing that. Of all of these, there are 2 strands that have some upcoming application deadlines, so I want to review that really quickly. We are hosting our first ever Business Institute this summer, assuming that all is well at that point with this COVID-19 public health crisis. This is subject to change. But as of right now, our plan is to bring a group of people from across the country to our home base in New Haven, Connecticut, to receive our business Train the Trainer. And applications for that are due in April. And if you are interested in learning more about that opportunity or you are interested in applying, you can email technicalassistance@allaourkin.org for more information about that. And then I just got a little reminder, shout out to Jerry, who was instrumental in putting this webinar together because April 10th is also his birthday. So if that helps you remember the application deadline, please feel free to mark that on your calendars. And then finally, our family childcare policy cohort. This is our attempt to take everything we just outlined in our policy framework and say, let's not let these strategies sit on a shelf. Let's see if we can provide support to folks who want to put some of these things into action. And so applications for that opportunity are due next Wednesday, March 25th. And that is going to be for a cohort of 6 to 8 small teams of state and local leaders who are interested in transforming family childcare policy and practice. And we're going to work with those teams through the end of 2020 and potentially beyond. So if anyone is interested in learning more about that, you can either email me directly at natalie@allourkin.org, or you can email policy@allourkin.org, and I would be happy to share some more information. And for those of you who think that's a cool opportunity, but you know you're going to miss the deadline this round, we do intend to do future policy cohorts and future business institutes in the future. And we're happy to blast out those opportunities through GLR and through our other channels as well. So now I have the distinct pleasure of turning it over to Jerletha McDonald, who is an absolute superstar in this field, who has been a friend of all our kins for quite a few years now, and who is someone that we look to for inspiration on a daily basis. So with no further ado, Jerletha, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I really appreciate you guys having me on here. It's such an honor. But before I start, I just want to give a shout out to all the family childcare providers across the United States who still have their doors open during this crisis, COVID-19. I know many providers. I'm in several Facebook groups and on social media, and we're all being a comfort to each other because we don't know what to do. I mean, we're following the guidelines that our state has out, CDC, childcare licensing, and just, you know, the basic hand washing and sanitizing that we do every day. But this is so new and just so raw. And this webinar is on point and needed to just even more spread a light on why family childcare is so important and how we are a fabric of the U.S. Economy and how we make the economy work and make and how we're here to help parents who are working and first responders. As you see, they're leaning on family childcare. So this is right on time, and I just want to say thank you guys for having me on here. And also, so my name is Jerletha McDonald, and I am an example of the family childcare business owner that All Our Kin is talking about. I am the founder and CEO of Arlington. And I'm a business owner. And so you can go to the next slide. Okay. And so what speaks to me the most about this webinar is I'm saying your All Our Kin's support for quality in the for family childcare. When your statement and your goal on family childcare providers having access to high quality resources, training, and support that they need to provide quality care and education that lays a foundation for success. That is so important. And once again, it's so important right now. We need the resources. We need to know how to run high quality, sustainable business is to sustain in this economy, and especially in something like this that's going on. Like what's happening now, but what's going to happen after. And so family childcare business owners need to be prepared for that. So I'm so grateful for All Our Kin and all the things that you guys are doing in the services that you're offering. And so Arlington, a little bit more about Arlington DFW. We provide and support a system network for family childcare professionals to thrive as small business owners and early childhood educators, leaders, and advocates. And so when we started in 2014, we started with a group of 6 women for just peer support and outreach and to conduct our own trainings because we weren't getting fed the things that we needed. And we knew that we needed more business training along with what childcare licensing, the 30-hour established childcare licensing require us to have each year. And also we want to give back to our community. So we got out and made connections and did community resources, because as you know, we're in the house most of the time with children, and community service is a big part of expanding your network and getting services for providers. So we started that, and it became a fabric of who we are. Education. Last year, 2 years ago, we had our first childcare CDA cohort, and I was in family childcare. Not everyone has a advanced degree, and that's okay, but I am a firm believer that everybody needs to have a CDA. And so we reached out to some community partners and formed a family childcare CDA cohort. And I can tell you from that we had 15 people graduate. Dr. Vieira Washington came down to our conference, graduated the ladies, and from that, 3 providers are going on to get their associate's degree. And all providers flipped their childcare centers and their environment, all because of the knowledge that they learned from that. And so we're going to do more of those. And we host monthly workshops to meet the childcare licensing requirements. Also increasing quality. So our QRS system in Texas is called Texas Rising Star, and we get mentors and stuff like that. But providers did not know much about it, and we heard like bad things. Oh, you don't want to be TRS, you don't want to be on the QRS system. But I knew it was something more to it. So we partnered with them, and they came to us, and they're explaining everything about QRS, what it is, and why we should be TRS providers. And so we're on our road to becoming TRS. But it doesn't fit everybody, because as you know, in Texas, you have to have a child on subsidy to be a TRS provider. And so at that time, I was like, okay, it's something else. So we're forming a NAFCC accreditation for those providers who don't quite fit that mold or just don't want to go that route. And so also, but what I'm really excited about is our business development component. And in this component, we do business management and how to run a high quality, sustainable business. But in my research and searching, about 4 years ago, I landed on this awesome website, All Our Kin's website, and I was reading through all the amazing things they do, and I was like, oh my gosh, there is someone that's like us, and they've been doing this for years. And so I hunt down Jessica's email address, and I emailed her. I was like, I got to know you. Could you please call me? And she did. So moving forward, we kept that relationship, and I met Natalie, and we talk at every conference that we go to and spend time with each other. And so we're really looking forward to applying for All Our Kin's Business Institute, and so that way we can come out there and learn more things that we can bring back to the family childcare practitioners here in Arlington. And also financial and health benefits. That is huge, especially right now. So we need to know that we have to have our finances in order, retirement and stuff like that. And also public policy. This is huge, especially right now. So that's why this is so important that we're talking about this. We need leadership development so we can be a part of these conversations. There's several conversations going on in our state, across the country, with decisions being made, and family childcare providers need to be on those calls, those webinars, and everything else. And so we are planning also to apply for All Our Kin's family childcare policy cohort to learn how to do that, and to learn how to do best, I guess, practice policies for, public policy. So that's it in a nutshell. And thank you so much for having me. And this is Arlington DFW. These are family child care providers in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex who have stepped up to the next level. Most of these providers have their CDAs. If they don't have their CDAs, they are degreed. And also, we're can't wait to learn the best business practices from All I Can. So we hope we get in. I'm just, hey, I know you have to pick, but we hope we get in. But we are on fire for what we do, and we are grateful for all of you guys. So thank you so much, All I Can.
Thank you, Jerletha. You are really just a superstar in the field, and we are so lucky to be able to count you as a partner and a friend in this work. We are going to turn it over shortly to question and answer, but before we do, I wanted to make sure that anyone who heard something today that resonated with them and may want to reach out for more information or to have a conversation has a way to get in contact with us. So on this slide, you'll see the websites and social media handles and email addresses for Jessica and myself and Jerletha. So I think we'll be sending these slides afterwards as well, but take a quick screenshot if you'd like to have this information now, and we would be happy to connect with any of you in the future. And with that, I'll turn it over to Yoli for our Q&A session.
Great, thank you. Well, as you guys probably saw, the Q&A chat box was bursting with questions, so there are quite a few. I want to just assure everybody that if we don't get to your question, we will have it answered by our presenters, and we will send responses back to you. But we'll try to get through as many. And before I start on the questions, you will see a poll pop up on your screen. Again, this is for you to give us feedback about these webinars. We want to know from you whether this is meeting your needs and how we might continue to do that. So don't forget to do that before you sign off. So lots of questions around salaries, around evaluation, around your training opportunities, around COVID-19. So I'm going to jump in quickly and have us get started. The first and most common question seems to be, how do we have all our kin in our community? So what would that look like? How do folks begin to engage in a conversation with you about having all our kin in their local community? So Jessica, I'm going to turn this to you.
Great, thank you so much. We are really excited to come to your community, but of course, you know, we're going to be moving slowly because technical assistance is new to us and we want to do it right, but we're really excited to have partners who want to learn and partner and teach us about how to replicate our model well. And by the way, I saw some of our partners in Nebraska and other places are on this call, which is really great. I would say shoot an email to me or Natalie and we'll set up a call. You saw that we have 2 cohorts that are launching pretty soon. So our business Train the Trainer is coming up in June, and we do anticipate potentially having another Train the Trainer series in the fall. So that's one great way to begin to get a sense of our content and whether and how it can be valuable to you. The policy cohort is also a really great new opportunity to engage with us. If you want to do the network building, the coaching, if you want to look at ways that we could open in all our kin where you are, I would say email me, email Natalie. We'll connect you to the right folks to talk to explore that possibility.
Great. Let's move into the questions around your trainings. That was also a top theme. There were questions around whether the trainings are in multiple languages or in other languages, not just Spanish, but others. Whether some of your trainings are virtual. Now this might be more important than ever. And then how long do you stay in relationship with those providers that are part of your training? Do you stay in contact with them? Do you continue to provide support as needed? How does that relationship continue beyond the trainings, Jessica and Natalie?
So these are really great questions, and I'll go through them in order. So first of all, one thing we lay out in our report are a series of principles that we think apply to all our trainings. So yes, all our trainings are offered in English and Spanish because of the demographics of the family child care educators that we serve. But obviously the trainings need to be available in the language of the family child care educators in your community. So that might mean we've actually been approached by some of our partners in the business Train the Trainer, for example, who are interested in working with us to translate our trainings into multiple languages. So if there are aspects of what we offer that you want to be able to offer in a language other than English and Spanish, I would say talk to us, because we're always thinking about ways to make our trainings more accessible to more people. I think it's also important to note that all our trainings are offered in evenings and weekends in locations that feel comfortable and friendly and are easy to get to. We always offer food. That's really important to us. There's a very strong social component because network and community building is really, really important in all fields, but especially for family child care educators who, again, often don't see other adults during the day and really need a professional community, as we all do. And are rooted in adult learning theory. So not people just sort of sitting and staring straight ahead, but people moving and engaging and using all different learning styles. So that's number one. Virtual. So because we value face-to-face relationships so deeply, we've been slow to adopt virtual learning, but we really have to now. So we've been sort of experimenting and researching for a while. We're going to be launching virtual learning at All Our Kin probably the week after next, and we will tell you what we learn. But we're also looking at other partners who do this really well to try and see how they've done this work so effectively, because you can do online learning really well, or in a way that really doesn't engage folks. And we know some folks have done this fabulously. So we're looking to learn from others. If you know of great models, please send them our way, because we're on this journey with you too. And finally, how long do family childcare educators engage with us? We often say that our quality highway has a lot of on-ramps but no off-ramps, because educators engage with us throughout their professional lifetime. We all need to be part of professional learning networks throughout our journeys, but the experience is very different. So, you know, you may begin with licensing support, typically move first to something like business training that's very foundational, that sort of opens the door to deep work around education and coaching. And then over time, reach the point where you become the peer mentor to others. Each program has its own duration, from the business training, which is a 10-week series with an optional 6-month of coaching, to our educational coaching, which lasts for 2 years. But I would say typically family childcare educators are engaged very deeply in a learning cycle with us for about 3 years, 4 years, and then really become a mentor and leader for others, but also come back and reconnect as they get new staff or encounter new and challenging situations in their work.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Let me move into the question of compensation. This is always on top of everybody's mind, and it's been such a key issue that we haven't been able to resolve in the field. But could you really speak to how you've been able to provide, to grow provider salaries, which you showed your data earlier, and there was a significant increase across 2 years. What levers were you using? And then a related question, could you give more details about how your work has enabled family childcare providers to increase their income? Are they charging more? Are they caring for more children? Are they caring for more private paying children, or better collecting payments? So if you could just talk about the compensation piece a little bit further, that would be helpful to a number of people that were asking questions.
Yeah, these are great questions. So in terms of, so you sort of see a couple of big bumps in income as family childcare educators work with All Our Kin. The first is around becoming licensed. So obviously when you become licensed, that radically increases your capacity so you can legally serve more children. It also, depending on how your state or city subsidy system is structured, may result in a higher per child payment. So in Connecticut, we've been able to leverage the fact that you get paid nearly twice as much as a licensed family childcare educator as you do as a family friend and neighbor caregiver. This is a great example of the intersection between policy and programmatic initiatives like ours, because obviously it makes licensing really attractive. But then there are other things that we're able to do. So a big one is around helping family childcares to predict vacancies and be really proactive about marketing and filling those vacancies. Another is about taxes and record keeping. Family childcare educators actually knowing what they can deduct so that they can keep more of what they earn. And then a third piece is indeed around fee collection. And a fourth is around, in some cases, creating mixed income programs. That's not true for all our family childcare educators, but some do end up creating programs that serve a combination of private pay children who typically can pay a little more and children who are on childcare subsidy. And I think it's really that combination of what you can charge the state, of what you can charge parents, of what you are collecting, of how you are filling vacancies, and what you are keeping at the end of the day. I will share that our business coaching program showed astonishing results, delivering last year a 90% increase in income for our family childcare educators, which really floored me. And I think it is indeed for all of these reasons. But policy is a big piece of this too. And so again, really pushing your state to use something like a cost estimation model for the amount of the child care voucher rather than that market survey, which is just a dog chasing its tail, I think is really, really fundamental.
Thank you, Jessica. You and Natalie talked about the legislation in California and those that are renting, but there was a question about those that live in public housing and the barriers that people that want to be family child care providers may be experiencing in public housing. So there's a question of whether you've seen how others might have worked to change and remove these barriers. In one particular city, their family child care was considered a business, so they were forbidden, and that family child care had to go underground. So maybe you could speak to that, both Natalie and Jessica, if you've seen something where that's working around removing these barriers.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit, and Jessica, please feel free to jump in. We've tended to see two issues when it comes to family childcare and public housing, and one is just vast differences in how leadership decides to promote and allow family childcare and public housing or not. And then a second is kind of around the quality of the housing stock and whether or not it's even able to meet state licensing requirements to enter into the regulated system. When it comes to working with leadership, and by that I mean like the executive directors of your local housing authority, I can't say that we at All Our Kin have a systemic solution to that. We've really taken it on a case-by-case basis. So in every community where All Our Kin has a presence, we make sure that we're establishing relationships with the executive directors of the local public housing authorities. And in several instances, that has resulted in that leader making the decision to allow family childcare where they previously had not. And that's just through sort of like education and relationships and conversation. In terms of the quality of the housing stock, this goes back to the facilities funding issue we talked about earlier. And in some cases that has been an insurmountable barrier. But we have really just tried to take the approach of wherever we are to build and educate the folks who are making these decisions about what is and is not allowed in public housing. Jess, do you have anything you would add to that?
No, I think you covered that really well. Thank you.
Sure.
Natalie, my colleague at the campaign, Jill Fioravanti, works with the various national public housing groups. Might be a good connection to make to see if at some of the leadership levels we can address this issue.
That's excellent. Thank you.
So let me get to the question that's also on everybody's mind, and that's COVID-19. You've all talked about how timely this is given what's happening. So there are some questions directly asking about how you are supporting your providers during this current situation. And then given that so many parents are not at work and are working from home or having to stay home to be with their kids, what lessons have you learned that we can share with the families that are caring for their kids right now?
Great. Yeah, I'll take this one. So, we are seeing a constellation of things that family childcare educators and childcare educators in general need right now. So the first of these is just good and transparent public health information. Everyone is struggling to know what to do, whether and when it is appropriate to stay open, whether and when to take a particular family, and knowing how to do this is really hard. So trying to be a broker for some of that information is one of our key issues. I will give a huge shout out, by the way, to Childcare Aware of America, who put out a flow chart today that takes the CDC information for childcare cares and makes it really, really so much more easy to engage with and comprehend and turn into something usable. So if you haven't seen that resource, look it up. It's fantastic. So that's the first, public health information. And the second is really information from state and local leaders about what they are doing and why. So, you know, do they want childcares to stay open? Do they want them to close? What kind of guidance around the conditions in your particular community? So, you know, again, we've been acting as a broker. We were able, in partnership with SEIU, our local union, to host a call for 1,100 family childcare educators last night with our Commissioner of Early Childhood, who brought some public health folks on the call. And we were able to really have a great town hall conversation and begin to get some of these questions answered. So the next thing folks need, I think, is public health support. So actual support from, again, nurse consultants or other medical professionals who can help advise on a case-by-case basis, and who can maybe, I mean, if we're really going to look to family childcare educators to support the children of first responders, we should have medical consultants visiting all these programs and screening families as they come in the door. So we've actually been talking to folks at some institutions about whether they might be prepared to help play that role for some of our family childcare educators. Because it's really important to note that when children who are the children of healthcare professionals come into a family childcare program, or really any children, right? Even if they're asymptomatic, they themselves may have been exposed to the virus. And so how do we make sure family childcare educators are safe and feel comfortable, and everyone in their households does as well? So that's the next thing. Third thing, supplies. We are hearing from our family childcare educators that they sometimes can't get the cleaning products that they need because there's been such a rush on the market. So, you know, we at All Our Kin are raising money to actually provide some of those supplies to our educators, and looking to other partners like those in government who can furnish those supplies as well. Gloves and cleaning materials and all those things that we need to make sure that programs are safe and healthy. The next thing, ongoing funding. So I would like to see a commitment from every single state or city official who manages childcare subsidy dollars, that they will keep those dollars flowing to programs, even if kids can't come, or even if programs decide that they have to close. The Federal Child Care Administration has made it really clear that states have the capacity to do it if they choose to do so. Let's make sure childcare dollars keep going to programs so that programs still exist at the end of this crisis, and so that no family childcare educator feels like she has to make a decision that's not the right health decision, either for herself or the family she's serving, on the basis of economics. And then new dollars. Businesses all over the country are going to take a hit. We have to make sure the family childcare businesses are part of economic stimulus approaches, because they're such a fundamental part of our economy in so many ways. So All Our Kin is advocating on all these issues together with national partners and with other networks and CCR&Rs across the country. And the last thing is making resources available to families. So again, family childcare educators are trusted messengers. They're great sources of information about things that families can do with their children if they keep their children home, but they can also be sources of materials, of supplies. Again, we're looking at maybe using funding to get, you know, everything from food to materials to books into the hands of families who are in need right now. So there's a lot I could say about all of this. I'm sorry, I talked a long time, but
No, you're good. I think everybody's eager to hear your responses, but also where to go for more information. So I'm glad we've been sharing throughout the webinar your contact information, links to your website. And we will continue to respond. We didn't get to all of the questions. I'm really sorry, but we will get them answered. I'll ask Jessica, Natalie, and Jerletha to help us with those and get those to you. So as we close, let me just remind you to complete the survey on your screen. And then if Jerry could go to the last slide. these are the upcoming webinars. The webinar on March 31st has changed. We are going to hold on that webinar that was about bringing to you the most current work with Vroom and Mind in the Making. Many of you know about those tools. But instead, we just got confirmation that we will use that time on March 31st to have a special webinar on options for philanthropy as schools close. So put that on your calendar, March 31st. You also see the March 24th webinar on the promise of tutoring. And we will stay in touch with you with all the webinars to follow. For now, thank you to all of our presenters, to Jerletha, to Natalie, to Jessica, to Mackenzie. We so appreciate you being on the webinar and being really the support for family childcare in our country. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. And again, on behalf of the campaign, be safe and stay sane.